What's going on, guys? I want to talk about Nintendo. People think I hate Nintendo for the last few videos I've made, but that's far from the truth. I totally love Nintendo. The thing is, I've been really getting upset with their business tactics, the way they sell things, and specifically, it's the way they sell things, and it's just gotten to the point where it's just too frustrating. And there's also other things as well. They're too afraid to venture out into other parts and other businesses. Basically, they only want to go with whatever they think is fancy, but Nintendo itself isn't doing anything particularly that's fancy. Because I've seen some Nintendo fans specifically say that Nintendo is comparable to Apple, and personally, yeah, I can see what they mean, but at the same time, it's far from that. Nintendo doesn't live up to Apple's quality. Especially when it comes to their mentality. And the reason for this is because Nintendo is kind of doing the Japanese thing, where when something's like video games or toys for kids, they kind of tend to treat it like trash, and they also tend to charge a whole lot for that. And what do I mean by this? Well, Apple wouldn't have released, let's say, the Nintendo Switch with the screen they released it with. They would have gone with a much better screen that doesn't get scratched easily. The only reason Nintendo went with that is because they see it as a toy, something that someone will probably outgrow and then they'll get rid of eventually. Or basically they are trying to lower costs so that kids can buy these things, and that's where the thing falls apart. Whereas if Apple were to sell it, they would have just charged you like another $100 just to put a scratchless glass screen on it. So they're not the same at all. And then, basically, it's because the markets are somewhat different, but at the same time, you have to also consider the Japanese mentality. Here, if you want to buy something that's for entertainment reasons, is something that you don't really need for life, it's overpriced. I'm talking about like $50 for DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever, and that goes for just about any movie. You want to buy a Disney movie, it might be even more than that. Unfortunately, that's very expensive. It goes down. Like, there's a bunch of shit like that. If you buy 3DS games here, it's almost $50. Like, the list goes on. Anything entertainment, anything that you don't really need is priced higher, and there's a reason for that. I feel like the Japanese themselves are slightly paid more than other countries, but it's not that they're just paid more, it's that they have more disposable income, because at the end of the day, once they pay for all their living expenses, they have disposable income. Like that's a lot of them save it, and they don't get into debts, they don't use credit cards or anything, so they don't have any extra money, they don't have extra bills, they don't basically have a need for insurance, life insurance, and maybe some medical insurance, like to pad out what they already have is there, but that's about it. Aside from that, once they pay for like their electric bill and stuff, you tend to have a lot of disposable income. There's also a lot of cultural reasons why people stay living with their parents for longer and stuff like that. So, or also they get handed houses from their families a lot of the time and stuff like that. So they don't really pay as much on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of the money that they make from working basically goes to them. And that's why I feel, anyways, in my opinion, that's why I feel like things like entertainment things are more expensive, and also why if you walk down the street, you have to pay a toll. That's insane here as well. Like, you're talking about $10 to cross the street sometimes. That's been Japan since like forever. Like, you go way back in the past, crazy tolls, whatever, you just look it up, you'll probably find it. But Nintendo brings this mentality over to the US, and I feel this is the big problem with it. You can't do that. Like, you can't bring this Japanese style Eastern mentality to the US because it doesn't match. Like, in the US, once a game goes over the $60 now, it used to be even $50 before. It kind of tends to be expensive. Yeah, when we were kids, we paid $70 for these things, but it was different times. Like, we barely ever saw games like we do nowadays, and then the business is just totally different. Like, games used to be really replayable. Like, that's why games were really hard sometimes to play, because you needed to get such skills so that you can become basically awesome at the game. You don't have to do that nowadays. Nowadays it's like watching a movie. Like the game starts and ends. It has nothing to do with building skills, so it's a totally different concept. Like you're not, one's like buying a sport, the other's like buying a movie. It's games nowadays, they basically run out and then they're limited. So like that's why I think the prices kind of went down and why the business also started to share more, like why it became bigger and stuff like that. Like why, I know that's just my opinion on how those things work, but at the same time what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, technology got cheaper, like things went on disc and stuff, and that's why games went down in price. But I feel people buy games more as well, like because they're cheaper. But Nintendo still stuck with their Japanese mentality, where they question why don't they charge more for certain things. And this is why I was kind of mad with the pricing of the Switch, even though people thought it was a decent price. Yeah, it's a decent price, I always thought, but like, yeah, you can buy PlayStation 4 for the same price. But yeah, I get it. It's, you can take it anywhere, all that stuff. Fine, I got it. But besides that point, what's bothering me is that the quality of these things, although it's better than what you'll get with a PlayStation or anything, Nintendo does it much better than all that. Because like, if you ever own an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation, I'm pretty certain that you've had one that just failed on you. Like, it just fails on you, and maybe none of your Nintendo consoles have done that. Granted, I did have a minor problem with my Wii, and that's because if you turn it off, the original Wii, and it had the standby yellow light on, if you left it on like that for too long, it'll actually burn part of your hardware. And then when you turn it back on, you'll see artifacts on your screen. I had that problem. It happened later on in the life of the system, but it really pissed me off once I saw it. It really disappointed me, because I always made sure to turn it off with where the red light LED would come on. Unfortunately, one day it just stayed on. For some reason, either it came back on and it had the yellow standby light, and it never turned off for like another hour or so. A few hours anyways. And then when I turned it back on to play the last Legend of Zelda, what was it, Skyward Sword? And I went to turn it on and it had all the artifacts on the screen. Unfortunate, but whatever. It was minor, but it kind of, you could tell the system was kind of burnt already. It's already a problem. So it's not flawless. No Nintendo consoles have ever been flawless to say, but they've been better built than other consoles. But given that they're not in any ways like Apple quality stuff. Yeah, Apple quality stuff kind of breaks, but I would say they're not there. I think the closest to a somewhat Apple quality was the Wii U, because it had kind of like a scratchless glass screen and all this other stuff. But the Switch is also going back in time to where your screen will scratch. Yeah, you can buy a protector for the screen, and they may have thought that's what you were going to do, but it's still not as good. Like, this kind of concept goes back even further in time. Even with the original Game Boy, it was still a toy. They're mainly toys. The intention for them were for them to break. You would buy another one if you wanted to, or if another system was already out at the time, you would buy that system. They want these things not to last long, basically. Especially when it comes to handhelds, because these things are supposed to be cheap, they're supposed to be used by kids, and they're supposed to break, and they're supposed to be replaced. They want that. So, I don't see that connection. So my main gripe with Nintendo is that they don't get the whole point that adults are buying these things nowadays. There's a market for, like, premium made products, and it's not just toys. It's not just for entertainment reasons. There's multiple reasons why people want them. Yes, it's mostly for entertainment, but the thing is, these things need to get to the point where, like, they're actually thinking about who's buying them, why they're buying them, and what's going on. They shouldn't treat the market like it's Japan, and they shouldn't treat the market like it's all kids, like they're constantly doing. They need to change this mentality, and I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it, but they really need to do it. And unfortunately for them, since it's a Japanese company, they're going to keep thinking Japanese. Nothing's gonna change. This is why I'm hoping Nintendo of America, like, comes back to what they used to be, where they would open their mouths more often and they would demand certain changes to their systems. Because the markets are different. They have to do that. Like, the markets are different. What people want is different. And I don't think they're gonna do that anymore. Not with Reggie around. That's why been my main gripe with Reggie is that I feel he's more of a yes man. I feel like he just panders to like a politician, panders to the people hiring him just so he can stay ahead and keep his job. And yeah, most people would do that, but at the same time, he's kind of like he's risking the whole future of what Nintendo of America is. And unfortunately for the U.S., that's just how the way it's going to be. And that's mostly my main gripe, basically, because like I really hope Nintendo of America like wakes up and then there's more to they demand more from the console and we get something. Even though the Switch is great as it is, it's still there's still flaws on it. There's still people that are waiting for an update to the system before buying it. Basically because they don't want like this comes back. Probably these people were burned in the past with something like a PlayStation or something. And they know that systems get upgraded over time and they're usually enhanced in some ways. But Nintendo specifically, I think it's with the original Game Boy Advance, which got upgraded to the Game Boy Advance SP, which made it much more playable. Like, the console was great originally, but it was really hard to see the screen. Like, it was almost impossible. I remember I basically gave up on it because it was just kind of very dark. So, once they did that upgrade, I missed out on it, and then I never actually touched the Game Boy Advance after that. But had I bought it during the Game Boy Advance SP era, I would probably play it tons more than I do now. I think people are waiting because they want a more portable Nintendo Switch, and I can't blame them. I would love it to be much more portable than it is. It's pretty portable, but I still feel like I'll break it. Like it's not great because the screen's not great. A lot of stuff isn't great about it. It's not as portable as I want it to be. I still feel like, for instance, my Wii U gamepad is much more durable than the Switch, because I've had that Wii U gamepad be thrown on the ground really hard, like rubbed through the ground, and I see no flaw in it whatsoever. But if I were to do the same with my Nintendo Switch, I feel like I would break it. Like, I've heard stories of people that have dropped it, and it's basically they broke the Joy-Cons or they broke something else in it, and I'm terrified of that, to be honest. So for it to be such a portable console and not to be amazingly playable everywhere, it's a shame. And it's basically, I think, all of these things happen because Nintendo's thinking mostly on how to maximize their profits in an entertainment business where they're thinking entertainment as in Japanese, where things are extremely cheap, they're extremely cheap made, and they're made, especially if it's for kids, it's made like garbage, which breaks. If it's for adults, then they'll do something to make it more nice, but it'll still break eventually, like in a year or two. But this is mostly nowadays. Like in the 80s, for instance, the Japanese really cared. Like if it was for adults, this thing would last. Like you could throw it probably through a volcano and it'll come out alive. And yeah, the Game Boy the original Game Boy kind of was like that, but the screen wasn't. The screen will scratch up on you pretty badly. I don't know, actually the 80s Game Boy, I don't know if it was that easy to scratch because I haven't held one for a while, but I think it wasn't because like every time I see my original Game Boy from like 1989 or something, 1990s, the screen's still pretty perfect, but I don't have it with me now, so I can't check. But the Game Boy Color, I remember specifically, and then the Game Boy Pocket, both had screens that were easy to scratch. And the Nintendo Switch seems to be also kind of made of the same kind of material. I'm kind of not sure because I haven't tested both out to see, but like, it's a bit different, but it's not perfect. And I know people get scratches from like putting it on their docks. I have no idea how they do that, but I'm pretty sure there has to be some reason why they end up with scratches on their from just docking the system. But it just means, like, to me personally, like, it could have been a much better hardware-wise. It could have been much more durable. It could have been much more, like, everything itself. Even if it costs $500 in the end, maybe there is a market to release a Switch that costs $500 with a glass screen and everything. I'm pretty sure there is. It's a more adult market, but if they made it, I'm pretty sure adults would buy it. But they're not thinking about that. This is why I say, business-wise, they do not at all. And they're not the same company as Apple. Apple's not thinking exactly Japanese when they release things. They're thinking more how to maximize profit, but also make a product that was like extra premium, so it looks specifically. for it to look like it's a premium product before, and then they also make it kind of feel like it. And I think this was more obvious when Steve Jobs was around, whereas nowadays certain things are starting to look much more cheap in their design, mostly to maximize profit, which is a big problem. But at the same time, they're still designed so that they're not hard. I mean, they're hard to break, kind of thing. And they're designed to give the illusion of being premium, whereas Nintendo basically kind of does the illusion thing, but at the same time, it's like a kid's product, so it breaks. Like it's not great. I miss the days when the GameCube first came out, because Nintendo was going down that route where it was more like Apple products. And somewhere around the Wii era, I would say this kind of started to phase out when they started to imitate more like that Apple design. That's basically the reason why I think people kind of seem to associate the two mentalities, because I think they're just ripping off ideas, basically, on how to create like the look that makes it look like an Apple product. But in the end, it feels nothing like it. It feels much more cheap, and it feels like it's flimsy. But back to the point is that the business tactics of Nintendo, when it comes to selling things, and it comes to like associating with fans and stuff, it is absurdly Japanese. Like it's still like stuck. When people say it's stuck in the 90s and stuff like that, it's stuck in the 90s because it's Japanese. The Japanese mentality is stuck in the past. They're still afraid of giving their ideas, or their IPs for people to play around with on YouTube, on the internet, simply because they don't want to associate any of those products with someone who may say something negative. It's no coincidence that the PewDiePie streaming incident where he said the N-word, like a week or so later, you see Nintendo dropping streaming support on YouTube. There's no coincidence. It happened because someone saw that hit the news, and then they thought maybe some guy like PewDiePie is gonna say the N-word while playing a Nintendo game, and that's gonna make Mario or something look bad. That's the main reason Nintendo banned streaming on their platform. It is the sole reason why Nintendo does not want to trust people with their IPs on the internet, because they for some reason they think people are stupid, and they're gonna connect these characters with their with YouTube personalities that say bad things. And I think that's so wrong in so many ways. First of all, it's again Nintendo doing this thing where they judge people wrong in a lot of ways, and they treat people basically like they're kids, and it's a big problem. Like, people aren't stupid. People do understand that there's a different product. What they are missing out on is a cultural thing, like where there's like a massive energy interested in their products, almost absurdly interested. Like, we're talking like Minecraft level, and they lose all this basically because they don't allow YouTube people or people to just do whatever they want with their IPs. They need to associate it more with them, and this is part of their mentality that's mainly Japanese. They don't want that, and for whatever reason, they're not going to allow it, and it sucks. It really does, because they really don't understand. And it goes further still with the way they treat fans, like fan games and stuff that goes online. They could willingly ignore it and then claim and not lose necessarily their trademarks and stuff. The reason they do it is because they're afraid of losing their copyright and trademarks and stuff, but they're not going to if they acknowledge it and they claim it for themselves, kind of thing. They can send maybe not necessarily a cease and desist, but claim that this product is theirs, and then stop it, or not acknowledge it at all and ignore it, and then build something off of it. Because, like, I personally think what they messed up a whole lot with Metroid specifically is that they haven't released a Metroid that basically emulates Super Metroid. They've done it with the Game Boy Advance games, but they're totally different. They feel different, and the music's different. Everything's different about that game. So if they do release a Super Metroid, let's say like Sonic Mania kind of style, where it's just Super Metroid again with all the assets of Super Metroid, but it's rearranged and everything, people will go crazy for that game. I know I would. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen because it's Nintendo, so whatever. They're not going to trust it to say some fan, like, they're not going to release fan games like Sega's doing. That would have been awesome, but they're not going to do it. And the reason it would be awesome is because those people understand what made those games special to the audience. Basically, they were the audience, so they see it as the audience, not how the creator sees it. The creator probably made a lot of cuts and stuff that they're not happy with it or something, and they want to put it back into the game now that they're making it again, and that ruins it most of the time because that's not what the audience wanted or what the audience saw. And that's why fan games are kind of really special in that way, or giving basically fans the right to create certain products. Like I've been saying it for years with a lot of TV shows. Like if you ever watch The Simpsons, and you watch The Simpsons from like the old Simpsons from like season 3 to like 8 or 9, you would understand like that whole show was way different than it is now. But if the creators, the ones that make the show, don't see that, and then they keep releasing the shit that they keep releasing. But if it was given to fans would probably make it a show more similar to what people used to like. But that's not gonna happen, so trust me. But it would probably improve that whole series, because that series right now is just garbage. But with games has been proven with like Sonic Mania, games totally improve when they're given to fans, because fans understand what made it special. Nintendo will never do this. Nintendo rather give it to some artist that thinks he's gonna be like this amazing person, and they're gonna reinvent the genre, and they're gonna make this great game, and then they release this garbage all at once. The reason is because they were delusional when they made this. Face it, they don't understand what the audience wanted. They have an image of this stuff. They probably weren't even fans of the original games, which is the main reason a lot of the games suck. Especially like if you see like writing on TV shows, like again The Simpsons, like the newer seasons are written by people that never were fans of the show. So like they make shit, and this happens a lot with video games because like management, everything changes, and the people that are involved are fans of different things. And you saw this a whole lot with Metroid Other M, where yeah, it may have had the original creator and everything involved, but his vision of what he was making back in the 90s is totally different than what the audience saw, especially here in America. And you can see this a lot with how Samus is being portrayed. Her character is very feminine nowadays because it's like ultra Japanese, so let's make her very feminine and sexy and stuff like this, when her character was like in the US was seen always as badass and like this tough woman and basically silent type person. Not anymore, but that's because again the creator had a different image than what the fans did. And this is Nintendo's basically problem, and they don't understand. Like, they constantly want to keep their IPs to themselves. They don't want anyone touching it. Their business tactics are stuck in the past where they're not listening to other people. They know what's right, and they're going to release what they know is right. But unfortunately, they don't seem to... since they don't really... like, they don't listen to fans. Like, they're not making these breakthroughs that they could be making right now. But this goes further. And the other things that really annoy me is that basically their selling tactics, like it's crazy, like the way they sell games and stuff. Like they do this limited quantity stuff because it works in Japan, it works with sales overall, it works really well. But the thing that you have to realize is that people in the US, especially Western societies, aren't Japanese. They're gonna talk. Once they get pissed off, they're gonna walk. The Japanese people will think that there's an actual shortage, and if the company tells them there is, yeah, they'll talk. But they know they can't do anything because it's for entertainment. They've been culturally, like they've grown up where they can just, you know, they know they have to be patient, they have to wait, and if they don't get it, tough luck kind of thing. But, you know, the whole shogunai thing with Japanese people, but it goes much like with the US, they literally just get pissed off, and it's like, well then, I'm not going to support you anymore, and they just literally walk away. They've done it already before. They've done it so often with Nintendo. When the GameCube came out, people didn't buy it because it looked like a kid's console, and Nintendo didn't listen to them. They didn't want a kid's console, so they said, you know what, fuck you Nintendo, I'm buying an Xbox. And that's exactly what's gonna happen with Nintendo time and time again, because they're not gonna listen to people. And the more that they do these things, the more that they piss people off in the US with not being able to get an SNES Classic or an S Classic. Once they release, let's say, the N64 Classic, if they're gonna get the SNES Classic, they're gonna say, well, fuck it, I'm not gonna even try. and there's going to be probably several on shelves. Only the super diehard fans are going to buy them, which I'm guess they're going to be happy. But Nintendo's slowly going to lose money, and then in the future they're going to be again where they were with the Wii U again, basically where their whole business tactics basically led them down to that path where they didn't listen. They thought they knew what people wanted, but again, what did they do? They released a console that looked totally aimed for preschoolers. No one wanted that thing that they released with the gamepad. It looked awful, so people just ignored it and said, you know what? Fuck it, I'm not buying that. Because they didn't think about it. They, again, were thinking about the Japanese way of doing things. You know why the Wii U is so Japanese? The Wii U is Japanese because it has that screen on the front. The whole point of that is because Japanese houses kind of tend to be much more small. And people also, in Japan, the reason why handhelds are more popular is because parents don't buy kids full systems to play on their TV. Because chances are they only have one TV in the house. They might have two, but the second TV is probably some small screen, so why the hell would you want to play on that when you can play on your, handheld? When you see, especially when you see Switch commercials here, you barely ever see it advertised as a console that connects to your TV. It almost always is shown as a handheld, and then specifically, there's a reason for that. For some reason, Japanese people do not buy their kids full-on systems. Who buys full-on systems here, like that connects to TV? Teenagers. And so the PlayStation 4 and stuff is more popular with teenagers and adults than it is with like kids. Kids, which are the massive, still in Japan, anime, entertainment, all of it is mostly aimed towards kids. And so Nintendo sells handheld type products, and they try to do it to sell it to kids. The Wii was an attempt to sell to the Japanese people a system that doesn't have to connect to a TV, and that's why it has a screen on the gamepad. And yeah, and this was a way to do it, the whole DS kind of style of gameplay, but at the same time have it, move around the house, but it plays on the screen so people can enjoy it while someone else maybe watches TV and stuff like that. That's very Japanese. And guess what? The Wii U sold a lot in Japan, more so than the PlayStation 4 for a long time. But that's very Japanese. In the US, that the second people saw that screen, it was over. No one wanted that thing. And it was obvious because it looks like a play school toy. It looks really hard to play with. It looks uncomfortable, and people didn't care. And then people later on, Nintendo specifically, didn't understand, and they come up with all these news stories where they say people just didn't understand the console. They thought it was another Wii and stuff like that. It was led to confusion. That's part of it, yes, but even then, that's again saying people are stupid, which I'm against it. It's not that. People knew the Wii U was a separate console. People didn't want the Wii U. Once they saw, again, the system, what it was, they didn't want it. There was no reason to buy it. It didn't come with, the Wii remote. It came just with that clumsy thing. You're gonna have to buy other stuff. They basically told you to enjoy this console. I still have problems because I somehow lost one of my Wii remotes, so I can't play dual player games. I have Mario Party 8 there, and I never played it because I only have one Wii remote. I don't want to play with myself, and so there you go. It never happened. Unfortunately for Nintendo, it's the way they did the Wii U, and then the Wii U, it was basically garbage. It's hard to use, and so that's why I would say it didn't sell. People aren't idiots. Even if people were confused, this thing would have still sold more. Especially given the numbers that the Wii originally did. This would have sold more if people wanted it. Because I'm pretty sure there's more than 20 million geeks out there that would have loved to have bought it had it been something different. Even if there was confusion based on the name. It would have sold at least 20 million consoles. It didn't even get to that in its lifetime. And the reason for that, again, was because no one wanted it. And Nintendo didn't listen to people. But that's beyond everything else. With the Switch, they fixed a whole lot of stuff, but they're still doing the same thing still. With the company, they're still releasing short supplies of stuff. They're still cracking down on YouTube like crazy. And then on top of that, the Switch is still kind of like a toy in some ways. If Nintendo doesn't fix these things, and they don't understand what people actually want, especially in the Western market. When they move to the Western market, they need to enhance these things. They need to find a way to do that in order to really, really continue their success. Yes, the Switch is being successful now, and it probably will continue to be. It'll probably dominate the market, I'm pretty sure. But they have a chance to again flop on release of their next console because they continue these tactics, and they need to stop these things. They need to figure out, especially when it comes to the Western market, what the Western market's really about. You need to let YouTube things go on because it's a form of huge advertisement. Like, Disney kind of is embracing YouTube more and more. You see it in their movies, you see it in a bunch of other stuff, and the reason specifically, like, you can see popular YouTubers like being bought by Disney. In fact, I would say, I would have a conspiracy theory where Disney basically made these YouTubers. Like, because to be honest, there's a reason why they're doing this. They want to get into the mentality of the current generation, especially the Western mentality of the current generation, which mostly is going on YouTube. If you're a kid nowadays and you're not watching YouTube, you're probably missing out. Much in the way that if in the 90s you're watching Nickelodeon or MTV, you're probably not part of a group. Nowadays, if you're not watching YouTube, you're probably not part of that group. What is Nintendo doing? They decide, I don't want to be part of that group. That is one business mistake that I cannot stand by. Like, it's totally insane. They're still trying to do the squeaky clean image that was never part of Nintendo in the 90s. I don't know why they think that's gonna work in the West. It's not. It works maybe in Japan, where like even Crash Bandicoot looks cute and adorable, but it doesn't work in the West. If anything, it destroys you in the West. But Nintendo, here they go, not understanding again, more and more every day. It seems like it's not gonna get through their heads. And the reason for this, I partially blame Reggie, because I feel like he's such a yes man that he doesn't correct these errors, which is his job basically, so that he can maximize profits in the US. I think it's time for them to realize these things. It's time for them to open up. Especially, like, they can do all this shit that they're doing with their business tactics in Japan. They want a short supply, do it in Japan. They want to ban YouTube, do it in Japan. But don't do that in the West. You can't do that in the West. In the West, there's different ways of doing it. Impact people, make noise, make them happy, just bombard them with your excitement, and people will go out there and they will buy your product. Don't overdo it though. If you overdo it, you're gonna have like this where people just get fed up with you and they walk away. But you're supposed to do it. And the thing that Nintendo or all these Japanese corporations don't understand is that this energy is very important. If you cannot capture this energy in your advertisements and your hype and all this other stuff, you cannot sell anything. And you must maintain it. It's not so hard to maintain this. The reason, for instance, Super Mario Odyssey commercial is not good, in my opinion. It's cringy. It misunderstands the whole energy. Like, it's not. If that thing was on TV during when Saturday morning cartoons were still a thing, yeah, great, because that looked like a kids commercial. But put it on YouTube and aim it to people that love Mario, that thing looks cringy as all hell. You really don't understand what the hell you're doing. Like, there's better ways of doing that. But whatever. Like, Nintendo's gonna stay stuck in the 90s. Someone needs to come into that company. Someone in Nintendo of America, and they need to shake that up, because that thing, what they're doing is upsetting already. It's time to finish this. It's time to understand how you sell things. Things sell out, yeah. The iPhone sells out all the time when it first gets released. Bring it back to the market in a month or two, and make sure people can get it, and make sure that they can get it in hordes, and that they're willing to do it, and that they're happy. End of everything. Don't try to maximize profits by shorting supply. It's a mistake. Because, like, even if you sell, let's say, 100,000 systems less because you didn't shorten supply, it's better for you in the long run, because, like, the people can trust you. Right now, people cannot trust you. You cannot sell. Keep doing this. Like, again, like, N64, like, if you release the N64 Classic, you're probably going to lose, like, hundreds of thousands to maybe millions of sales just because people are not gonna even try. and they're not gonna even try because they know they can't get these things. Make sure people can get SNES Classics. Make sure you make it aware to them that they can get this thing if you want to sell the N64 Classic in the future. Reggie came out and said that, yeah, you're gonna be able to get it. Nothing has proven that that's true. Nothing. It feels short. It feels like you're never gonna be able to get it. So if Nintendo doesn't go out of their way to prove that you can get it, no one's gonna buy anything else. I mean, they're gonna sell much less of them anyways. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people gave up on the SNES Classics because they could not get NES Classics already. So when when Nintendo came out and said they're gonna make them again available in the summer, it sounded good. But you need to make sure that people can get them. If they cannot, they will give up. So Nintendo, like, if they can fix these 3 business things, the YouTube marketing stuff, modernize themselves to whatever it is now, get back the energy. If they can really make more SNES Classics available, make sure that people can reach the supply, and then if they stop doing the short in supply kind of stuff, and if they stop, again, the last thing they need to basically stop, the third thing, is that they need to make sure to embrace their fans. Like, when fans say stuff, listen to them. You can ignore them if you don't think it's good, but you need to acknowledge that they're there. You can't keep like suing your fans. They make a game on they make a fun fan game. Go to your websites. Don't acknowledge the fan games. Like, acknowledge that someone went out of their ways to make it, and then maybe at the same time, try to remake it yourself if you want at the same time, or just simply ignore it. Ignore it, and if it gets too big or something, then maybe try to shut it down, but not just in a way that acknowledges that you own the trademark and that they should not be doing this. But don't go out of your way to destroy them. I mean, if Sega could do it with Sonic, where they embraced their fans and they gave them a platform to make these games, and then just ignored it, basically, that would be the best thing you can do. What you do with your fans is atrocious. Like, how can people continue to be your fans if they're afraid to be your fans, basically, in the end? Like, if I'm a fan of Nintendo and I want to show how great Nintendo is by making art of Mario and stuff and put it outside, I'm afraid Nintendo's gonna sue me, and from what I've seen, they will. They need to fix that. That's the last thing they need to fix. If they fix these 3 things, no longer short supply, make sure to allow YouTube things or whatever, improve your marketing, and third, listen to your fans, be nice to them, then they'll be more successful overall. They're a massively successful company. I'll give them that, but that success always comes with like hurdles for them, and the reason is, yeah, they take risk, but the other reason is because of all these things that they don't acknowledge. This has been going on for years. It's been going on since the beginning. They need to stop it, and they need to improve. Once they do, great. Nintendo will be one of the greatest companies ever. Fans will go crazy. Like, they will have boards like Apple kind of fans, more so than they do now. And that thing would be almost unstoppable. Like, it'll be continuous success as it goes. But at the moment, most investors, what they see is, like, once Nintendo's being successful, then they put all their money in, and then the second that they're gonna release something new or whatever, all that money goes out. It just crashes, and then they realize it's shit that they're made, and it's gone. And Nintendo goes again through this thing. One thing that I want to make clear is that Nintendo's always been afraid to go third party and stuff like that. And then people always defend it by saying, like, it didn't go so well for Sega. It didn't go well for Sega because Sega went bankrupt. You have to understand that. Sega went bankrupt and it was bought by another corporation, the Sammy Corporation of Japan. Those people only cared about the arcade parts of Sega. They basically abandoned everything else that Sega was at that point. It's not that Sega didn't do well. It's just that they didn't need that. They don't know nothing about that business, and they didn't care about it. And so that's why Sega kind of went down since then. It has nothing to do with them going necessarily third party. That would have been successful had they, again, kept the energy going, kept releasing games, but they didn't. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Like, I hope Nintendo improves. It's a company I totally love. It's a company I still really like play with every day. But it's coming basically to the point where I'm getting fed up with them because it's just sad. Like, it makes me sad that I'm basically hurting myself trying to buy their products. So again, Just my opinion. If you still love them wholeheartedly and you can't find any fault on their part, fine. Go ahead and do that. I totally love them still. Supporting them is a little bit different concept. It's like a son that's basically being too rebellious, and what can you do in the end? Like you love them, but you know if you try to help them, it's just gonna hurt them in the end. So, or you're gonna hurt yourself. So that's basically where we're at. Anyways, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, you know, hit that like button or whatever, and subscribe if you want. I'm basically making these videos for fun at the moment. I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to make like a channel out of this because the way YouTube changed already. Like I can't even monetize these videos anymore. So whatever you want to do, go ahead, guys. Thanks for listening. I'm signing out. Have a good day. Bye.